Have you ever stopped to think about what really keeps a wizard trapped between life and death for centuries? What makes someone choose to wander castle corridors instead of moving on? The story of Hogwarts ghosts is much darker and deeper than any film managed to show. There are secrets buried in the pages of books that reveal disturbing truths about death, regret, and choices that last forever. Prepare yourself, because what you're about to discover will completely change how you see these ethereal figures that inhabit the most famous castle in the wizarding world. Before we dive into this journey through Hogwarts' haunted corridors, I need your support. If you're a Harry Potter fan and want to unravel all the mysteries of the wizarding world, click the subscribe button down there right now. And tell me here in the comments, from which city are you watching this video? I love knowing where our Potterhead community comes from. Now yes, let's get to the complete truth about Hogwarts ghosts. To understand Hogwarts ghosts, we first need to comprehend what a ghost is in the Harry Potter universe. This isn't something simple or romantic as many people imagine. According to J.K. Rowling herself, ghosts are marks left by wizards and witches who, at the moment of death, chose to remain in the world of the living. But attention, this choice has a terrible cost. A ghost is not the person they were, but only a pale impression of them, trapped in a limited and melancholic state of existence. They cannot feel physical pleasure, don't experience new feelings, don't evolve emotionally. They are prisoners of their own fears and regrets. The magic behind ghostly existence is deeply connected to the fear of death. When a wizard or witch is about to die and feels absolute terror of the unknown that comes after, they can make a choice in the last moment. Leave a mark of themselves on the earthly plane. It's not a heroic or noble act. It is, in fact, an act of supreme cowardice in the context of the wizarding world, although understandable from a human perspective. The series creator made it clear that no muggle can become a ghost, as they don't possess sufficient magical ability to make this choice at the moment of death. Now let's get to know in detail each of Hogwarts' resident ghosts, starting with the most famous, the house ghosts. Each house has its own ghost, and their stories reveal much about the values and essence of each one. The Fat Friar is Hufflepuff's ghost, and his story begins in the medieval period. In life, he was a cheerful and kind friar who had talent for magical cooking and was known for preparing healing potions. However, his story took a tragic turn when dark wizards of the time discovered his abilities. The Fat Friar died defending a group of muggles who were being attacked, and although the exact details of his death aren't completely revealed in the books, we know it was a violent death. His choice to become a ghost seems to be linked to the desire to continue helping others, especially younger and insecure students. He maintains the cheerful and welcoming personality he had in life, always being friendly with all students. It's common to see him trying to console students who are going through difficulties, although his ghostly nature limits the real comfort he can offer. The Grey Lady, Ravenclaw's ghost, has without doubt the most tragic and important story of all Hogwarts ghosts. Her true name was Helena Ravenclaw, and she was the daughter of Rowena Ravenclaw, one of the school's 4 founders. Helena grew up in the shadow of her mother's genius, constantly feeling inadequate and wanting to prove her own worth. Envy and the desire to be as brilliant as Rowena consumed her. In an act of rebellion and search for recognition, Helena stole her mother's diadem, a magical object that supposedly increased the wisdom of whoever wore it. This diadem was Rowena's most precious possession, imbued with her own magic. Helena fled, taking the diadem with her. Rowena, already gravely ill and knowing she was dying, despaired to recover both her daughter and her diadem. She sent a man who was secretly in love with Helena to bring her back. That man was the Bloody Baron. When the Baron finally found Helena in the forests of Albania, She refused to return with him, taken by anger, jealousy, and frustration after years of rejection. The Baron stabbed her in a fit of rage. Immediately after committing the murder, he was taken by devastating remorse and took his own life with the same weapon. Helena died without ever having reconciled with her mother, and Rowena passed away without seeing her daughter again. It was this deep regret and the impossibility of fixing her mistake that trapped Helena to the earthly plane as a ghost. She kept the secret about the diadem's location for centuries, ashamed of what she had done. Guilt and remorse completely define her ghostly existence. She wanders through Hogwarts corridors, especially through Ravenclaw Tower, a melancholic and reserved figure. Most students barely notice her presence. It was only when Tom Riddle, still a student, used all his manipulative charm that she finally revealed where she had hidden the diadem. Riddle transformed the diadem into a Horcrux, a final desecration of Rowena Ravenclaw's legacy. The Grey Lady only told this complete story to Harry Potter during the Battle of Hogwarts, when she could finally help undo part of the evil she had involuntarily caused. The Bloody Baron, Slytherin's ghost, is without doubt the most frightening of Hogwarts ghosts. He is covered in silver bloodstains, eternal testimony of his horrible crime. The chains he drags are a physical representation of his guilt and remorse, a self-imposed prison for all eternity. In life, the Baron was a wizard of nobility who studied at Hogwarts and was placed in Slytherin. He fell obsessively in love with Helena Ravenclaw, but she never reciprocated his feelings. When Rowena sent him to fetch Helena, he saw this as a final opportunity to win her over. What the Baron did in the forests of Albania has haunted him for centuries. After killing Helena and realizing the magnitude of his act, he couldn't live with the weight of that guilt and plunged the same dagger into his own chest. His fear of judgment and punishment he would face in death made him choose to remain as a ghost. Ironically, this choice condemned him to a much worse punishment, an eternal torment of contemplating his crime. The Baron rarely speaks with anyone, except occasionally with other ghosts. He's respected and even feared by other ghosts due to his terrifying appearance and his aura of past violence. Even Peeves, Hogwarts' chaotic poltergeist, obeys the Bloody Baron, the only being in the castle who can control him. The relationship between the Baron and the Grey Lady is one of heavy silence and mutual avoidance. They share a tragic past that neither can escape. Occasionally, students report having seen the Baron observing the Grey Lady from a distance, but he never approaches her. This unresolved relationship between murderer and victim, both trapped in the same castle for all eternity, is one of the most disturbing aspects of Hogwarts mythology. Sir Nicholas de Mimsy Porpington, better known as Nearly Headless Nick, is Gryffindor's ghost. His story is simultaneously tragic and absurdly comic, which aligns perfectly with Gryffindor's nature, which values both courage and good humor. Nick lived during the 15th century and was a wizard of the court. He tried to use magic to straighten the teeth of a court lady, Lady Grieve, but the spell went disastrously wrong, and she ended up growing tusks. This error was considered inappropriate use of magic, and Nick was condemned to death by decapitation. The problem is that the executioner assigned to the execution, a man named Sir Properly Decapitated Podmore, was using a blunt and extremely dull axe. It took 45 blows to almost separate Nick's head from his body. The key word here is almost. A small piece of skin and tendon remained connected, leaving his head hanging grotesquely. That's why he's called Nearly Headless, a nickname that deeply irritates him. Nick desperately wanted to be admitted to the Headless Hunt, an exclusive group of decapitated ghosts, but is constantly rejected due to this technical detail of his execution. Nick's death was a result of fear and vanity. He was afraid of death, and at the moment of his disastrous execution, chose to remain as a ghost. Over the centuries, Nick became a cheerful and sociable figure at Hogwarts. although he carries an underlying sadness about his condition. He's particularly close to Harry Potter, serving as a supportive and advisory figure. It was Nick who first explained to Harry about the nature of ghosts during the second year, after Nick's death was almost repeated when he was petrified by the basilisk. Nick also defended Harry during the second year, when many suspected he was the heir of Slytherin. One of the most revealing moments about Nick's ghostly nature happens in Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix. After Sirius Black's death, Harry seeks out Nick to ask if Sirius could come back as a ghost. Nick's answer is devastatingly honest. He explains that only wizards who fear death, who cling too much to earthly existence, choose to become ghosts. Brave people like Sirius move on. Nick admits that his choice to become a ghost was an act of cowardice, and he lives, or rather exists, in a state of deep regret. He's not really alive, can't experience anything fully, can't taste food or feel warmth. He's trapped in a pale and substanceless existence. This revelation is one of the darkest in the Harry Potter universe, showing that death shouldn't be feared to the point of choosing an eternity of reduced existence. Besides the house ghosts, Hogwarts houses several other resident ghosts, each with their own unique story and personality. Moaning Myrtle is perhaps the best known of them, and her story is particularly sad. Myrtle Elizabeth Warren was a Ravenclaw student during the 1940s, when Tom Riddle still attended Hogwarts. She was a shy, insecure girl, constantly bullied by other students, especially Olive Hornby, who cruelly mocked her for wearing glasses. In June 1943, Myrtle was crying in the second-floor girls' bathroom after another bullying episode when she heard someone speaking in a strange language, which was actually Parseltongue. She opened the stall door to complain to whoever was making noise, only to look directly into the eyes of the basilisk that Tom Riddle had released from the Chamber of Secrets. Myrtle died instantly, becoming the victim of the chamber's opening. No one, except Riddle, knew how she really died. Dumbledore suspected a monster at the time, but could never prove or identify the basilisk. Myrtle chose to become a ghost because she was furious about her premature death and the bullying she had suffered. She haunted Olive Hornby relentlessly for years, appearing at the most inopportune moments, including during Olive's wedding, until the Hornby family contacted the Department for the Regulation and Control of Magical Creatures to restrict Myrtle to the place of her death. Since then, she inhabits the second-floor bathroom, where she continues to cry, moan, and occasionally flood the place when she's particularly irritated. Myrtle is temperamental, dramatic, and incredibly lonely. Although she developed a strange friendship with Harry Potter during his second year, Myrtle's bathroom became an important location in Hogwarts history, being the entrance to the Chamber of Secrets, and later a hiding place for Ravenclaw's diadem, transformed into a Horcrux. Myrtle possesses considerable knowledge about Hogwarts plumbing and secret passages due to the time she spends traveling through the pipes. She also developed a peculiar passion for Harry Potter, occasionally appearing to him at embarrassing moments, including while he was bathing in the prefect's bathroom. Professor Binns is Hogwarts' only ghost professor and has a unique story. Cuthbert Binns was a history of magic professor for so long that he simply got up as a ghost one day after falling asleep in an armchair in the staff room and never woke up again. His body remained in the chair while his ghostly form rose and went to teach class the next morning, apparently without realizing he had died. This transition was so smooth that not even the students themselves immediately noticed the difference, except for the fact that Binns now passed through blackboards instead of around them. Binns continues teaching history of magic with the same monotony he had in life, perhaps even worse. His classes are notoriously the most boring in all of Hogwarts, with Binns narrating historical events in a monotonous and lifeless voice, never altering his tone or showing any enthusiasm. He rarely notices his students as individuals, frequently confusing them and calling them by wrong names. Hermione Granger is practically the only student who pays genuine attention in his classes. Despite his sleepy nature, Binns is a valuable source of historical information, albeit reluctant. It was he who, under pressure from Hermione, finally told students about the legend of the Chamber of Secrets during Harry's second year. Binns is skeptical about myths and legends, preferring documented historical facts, which ironically makes him less useful when it comes to understanding many aspects of the magical world where legend and reality often intertwine. Peeves deserves special mention, although technically he's not a ghost, but rather a poltergeist. Poltergeists are different from ghosts because they were never human. They are chaotic spirits created by youthful energy and disorder, manifestations of mischief and chaos. Peeves has existed at Hogwarts for centuries, probably since the school's founding, feeding on the energy of thousands of students over the years. He is completely solid, unlike ghosts who are translucent and can manipulate physical objects, frequently using them as projectiles against students and teachers. Peeves is chaotic, malicious, and delights in causing trouble. He doesn't respect authority except for the bloody barons, and even Dumbledore had difficulty controlling him. Only Dumbledore and the Baron could really make Peeves obey. During Dolores Umbridge's tenure as headmistress, Peeves became an unlikely ally of the students, causing maximum chaos to sabotage her attempts at authoritarian control of the school. Fred and George Weasley even explicitly encouraged Peeves to cause the greatest disruption possible when they left Hogwarts, something Peeves took very seriously. During the Battle of Hogwarts, Peeves actually fought alongside the school's defenders, throwing pufferpods at Death Eaters and singing insulting songs about Voldemort. After the battle, he even sang a commemorative song, something extremely rare for the normally chaotic entity. The relationship between Peeves and Hogwarts ghosts is complex. While ghosts are melancholic and trapped in the past, Peeves exists purely in the present, a manifestation of youthful energy and chaos. There are several other lesser-known ghosts who wander through Hogwarts corridors. The Gryffindor Knight, whose true name was Sir Patrick Delaney Podmore, is the leader of the Headless Hunt, that same exclusive group that continues rejecting Nearly Headless Nick's admission. The club holds ghostly activities like head polo racing and head juggling competitions, events that only completely decapitated ghosts can properly participate in. The Fat Lady was another professor who became a ghost, although little is known about her personal story, beyond the fact that she occasionally blocks passages by being too friendly with students, talking at length with them about trivial matters. There are also mentions of a ghost of a wizard who was impaled by an arrow, another who scared himself to death, seeing his own reflection, and several other spectres that inhabit different areas of the castle. Ghosts are visible to both wizards and muggles, although muggles generally only feel intense cold and discomfort when near ghosts, not being able to see them clearly as wizards do. Ghosts can also become invisible at will and pass through walls, doors, and objects. However, they cannot and do not wish to leave the general area where they chose to remain, except in very rare circumstances. Myrtle could only haunt Olive Hornby because she had an obsessive purpose and consuming anger directing her. The emotional nature of ghosts is limited. They are trapped in the emotions they felt at the moment of death or the concerns that prevented them from moving on. They don't grow emotionally, don't form new significant bonds in the same way living people do, and don't experience physical pleasure of any kind. It's an existence defined by stagnation and absence. Nick describes this as being trapped in a state of non-life, observing the world but never really participating in it. The choice to become a ghost is presented as something regrettable in the Harry Potter universe. When Harry asks Nick if Sirius could come back as a ghost, Nick makes it clear that he hoped Sirius had moved on, courageously faced death instead of clinging to the world of the living. This perspective reflects one of the series' central themes, that death is a natural part of life and shouldn't be feared to the point of choosing a diminished existence. During the Battle of Hogwarts, ghosts played varied roles. Although they couldn't physically fight against Death Eaters, they served as messengers and spies, moving through walls and reporting enemy positions. Nearly Headless Nick organized the ghosts to help evacuate younger students and guide them to safe locations. Even Peeves, normally concerned only with mischief, actively participated in the castle's defense, showing that even Hogwarts' most chaotic entity had loyalty to the school. The Grey Lady had a particularly crucial role in the Battle of Hogwarts. After centuries hiding her secret about the diadem, she finally revealed the truth to Harry Potter. This revelation allowed Harry to locate and destroy the Horcrux, an essential step to defeating Voldemort. For Helena, this moment represented a form of redemption, an opportunity to finally do something positive after centuries of regret. She helped undo part of the evil that Voldemort had caused using the object she had stolen from her mother. It's fascinating to note that Voldemort, despite his obsessive fear of death, never considered becoming a ghost. He saw ghosts as pathetic and diminished beings, lamentable remnants of wizards who had courage neither to live fully nor to truly die. His quest for immortality through Horcruxes was an attempt to maintain his power and substance, not to exist as a transparent and impotent shadow. Ironically, by tearing his soul into pieces through Horcruxes, Voldemort condemned himself to a fate potentially worse than becoming a ghost. The question of why some wizards become ghosts and others don't, even when they die in similar ways, is complex. It's not just a matter of trauma or violent death. Myrtle and the Baron died violently and became ghosts, but countless other wizards who died in equally terrible circumstances, including many during the wars against Voldemort, didn't return as ghosts. The difference seems to lie in the individual psychology of the wizard at the moment of death, in their particular attachment to earthly life and their specific fear of what comes after. Nick explains to Harry that ghosts are wizards who, when the time came to depart, chose to stay behind. It wasn't a choice forced upon them by external circumstances, but an active decision, although made at the most vulnerable moment of their existences. This choice seems to be irreversible. There's no evidence in the books that a ghost can choose, centuries later, to finally move on. They are trapped in their decision, prisoners of their own past fear. The relationship of ghosts with magic is also interesting. They cannot perform magic the way living wizards can. A ghost cannot use a wand or cast spells. However, their very existence is magical, a continuous act of unconscious magic, keeping the impression of their personalities anchored to the earthly plane. This suggests that magic in the Harry Potter universe is deeply connected to the soul and essence of being, not just to knowledge of spells or ability to use a wand. Ghosts also have limited sensory capabilities. They don't feel temperature the same way living people do, although they can detect extreme changes. They don't feel physical pain, but clearly experience some form of emotional suffering, as evidenced by the Grey Lady's constant melancholy and the Bloody Baron's eternal remorse. They can see and hear normally and can communicate with both the living and other ghosts without difficulty. However, they cannot experience touch, taste, or any physical pleasure in a meaningful way. The absence of certain ghosts at Hogwarts also tells stories. None of Hogwarts' founders returned as ghosts, despite their deaths having occurred in emotionally charged circumstances. Godric Gryffindor, Helga Hufflepuff, Rowena Ravenclaw, and Salazar Slytherin all faced death and moved on, even Rowena, who died heartbroken by her daughter's betrayal. This demonstrates that even in deep emotional pain, it's possible to face death with courage. Rowena had every reason to become a ghost. She died without reconciling with Helena, without recovering her diadem, without seeing her legacy protected. But she chose to move on. The deceased headmasters and headmistresses of Hogwarts also moved on, although they leave enchanted portraits to advise future headmasters. These portraits aren't ghosts, they're magical echoes intentionally created, programmed with the personalities and knowledge of the people they represent. Dumbledore could have chosen to become a ghost, having so many unfinished matters and so much knowledge still to share. But he didn't. He accepted death as it should be accepted, as the next great adventure, in the words he himself used. The absence of ghosts among dead Death Eaters is also notable. Dark wizards like Bellatrix Lestrange, who certainly feared death considering her fanatic loyalty to Voldemort and her quest for immortality through him, didn't return as ghosts. This suggests that perhaps the process of becoming a Death Eater, with all the dark magic involved, might affect someone's ability to make this choice. Or perhaps, in the final moment, even dark wizards find something beyond fear. Hogwarts ghosts witnessed extraordinary events over the centuries. They saw generations of students grow up, successes and tragedies, periods of peace and times of war. Professor Binns taught history of magic for so long that his memory spans events that for everyone else are just historical records. Nearly Headless Nick saw the rise and fall of countless headmasters, the evolution of the Four Houses, changes in laws and wizarding society. The Grey Lady carries perhaps the heaviest burden of all, having witnessed Tom Riddle transform into Voldemort, knowing that she played an involuntary role in that by revealing the diadem's location. She saw Harry Potter arrive at Hogwarts, saw similarities and differences between him and young Tom Riddle. For decades, she carried the weight of knowing that her mother's diadem had been desecrated, transformed into a receptacle for a fragment of the most malignant soul in modern wizarding history. The relationship between ghosts and Hogwarts living students varies enormously. Some students, like Hermione, treat ghosts with respect and academic interest. Others, especially younger ones, may initially be afraid or find ghosts fascinating as novelties. Over time, most students get used to the ghostly presence, accepting them as part of Hogwarts tapestry. House ghosts frequently develop mentoring relationships with students from their respective houses, offering advice and support, albeit limited by their ethereal nature. Nick developed a particular fondness for Harry Potter, recognizing in him a young man who had faced death and loss repeatedly, but still maintained courage and kindness. The friendship between them, although unusual, demonstrates that genuine connections can exist between the living and the dead, even if they are inevitably limited by the fundamental barrier between the two states of being. Moaning Myrtle had a more complex relationship with Harry. She developed an adolescent crush on him, something that remained unchanged since her death at 14. Her obsession with Harry, although often annoying to him, reveals something sad about the ghostly nature. Myrtle is eternally trapped in the mentality of a 14-year-old, unable to mature emotionally, condemned to experience the same types of feelings and reactions she had when she was alive. She will never experience true first love, never grow beyond her adolescent insecurities, never find peace or real happiness. Other ghosts serve educational functions in less formal ways. They are living examples of magical history, walking primary sources who witnessed events that would otherwise be just words in books. They also teach lessons about death, choice, and consequence simply by existing as they exist. Each Hogwarts student must eventually contemplate what it means that these spirits chose to remain, and what that choice cost them. Hogwarts architecture seems to respond to its ghostly inhabitants. The castle, being deeply magical, adapts and changes to accommodate those who live and exist within it. Areas frequented by certain ghosts often have a particular atmosphere, a quality that reflects the spectral presence. Myrtle's bathroom is always slightly flooded and has an aura of perpetual sadness. The areas where the Bloody Baron usually wanders have a coldness that goes beyond the physical, an emotional weight in the air. Ghosts interact with other magical elements of the castle in interesting ways. They can converse with portraits, although portraits are only enchanted echoes, not true consciousnesses. They can pass through moving staircases without being affected by their movements. They can access secret passages and hidden areas of the castle, making them potentially valuable guides, although they rarely choose to act in that capacity. Hogwarts ghosts are, ultimately, symbols of regret, fear, and the difficulty of letting go. Each of them represents a human story of choices and consequences. Helena Ravenclaw symbolizes regret for actions that cannot be undone and relationships that cannot be repaired. The Bloody Baron represents extreme guilt and eternal self-punishment. Nearly Headless Nick represents vanity and fear of the unknown. Moaning Myrtle represents a life interrupted prematurely and the inability to find peace. Professor Binns represents habit so ingrained it continues beyond death. Together, these ghosts create a complex tapestry of spectral existences, each offering a different lesson for the living students who wander the same corridors. They are constant reminders that life should be lived fully, that regrets should be faced and resolved while there's still time, that death shouldn't be feared to the point of choosing a non-life, and that moving on requires courage, but is the healthiest and most natural choice. J.K. Rowling's decision to include ghosts so prominently at Hogwarts wasn't just an element of magical world-building. It was a deliberate narrative choice to explore themes of mortality, choice, consequence, and acceptance. Ghosts serve as educators in more than one way. They teach history, yes, but more importantly, they teach about the nature of death and life, about what it means to let go, about the cost of holding on too tight. When we analyze each main ghost's narrative function throughout the series, we realize how each contributes to the development of central themes. The Grey Lady remains in the background during almost the entire series, a mysterious and reserved figure that few students actually notice. This social invisibility reflects her own nature. Helena chose an existence of self-imposed isolation, eternally punishing herself for her mistakes. When she finally opens up to Harry in the 7th book, it's a moment of tremendous vulnerability. She reveals not only the diadem's location, but the complete story of her betrayal, her regret, and her involuntary role in helping Voldemort. This confession is liberating for her in a way she never experienced in centuries. Although still trapped as a ghost, there's a weight that's lifted by finally telling her truth. The moment when Helena tells her story to Harry is structured almost like a religious confession. Harry serves as a kind of confessor, someone to whom she can finally reveal her burden. The way she describes her mother's anger and disappointment, the theft of the diadem, her final encounter with the Baron, all of this is told with a pain that remains fresh despite the centuries. This illustrates one of the cruelest truths about ghostly existence. Time doesn't heal wounds for ghosts. They cannot process trauma or grow beyond their regrets. Each day of their spectral existence is as painful as the first. The Bloody Baron, on the other hand, never receives a similar moment of catharsis. He remains silent, frightening, covered in silver blood, dragging chains. His story is told mainly through Helena and brief mentions by others. The Baron chose a different form of self-punishment. Where Helena isolated herself emotionally, the Baron became a figure of terror, a visual representation of his own crime. The chains he drags weren't imposed by external authority. They are manifestations of his own guilt, psychological weight made visible. He chooses to appear frightening, chooses to keep the bloodstains visible, chooses to make himself a monster because he believes that's what he deserves to be. The dynamic between Helena and the Baron adds layers of complexity to the narrative. They're trapped in the same castle, sharing the same space for centuries, but apparently never converse, never interact directly. Murderer and victim. eternally separated but eternally connected by an act of violence. It's a particular form of hell, and it's self-imposed. No external force compels them to remain at Hogwarts specifically. They choose to be here, perhaps because it's where their stories began, where Helena was once a happy student before everything went wrong. This choice of location is true for most Hogwarts ghosts. They aren't trapped in the castle by external magic, but by emotional connection. Nearly Headless Nick probably never visited Hogwarts in life, since he died in the 15th century and there's no indication he was a student. However, he chose Hogwarts as his ghostly residence location, perhaps because it's a place of learning and growth, an ironic contrast to his own stagnation. Or perhaps simply because it's a place where he can have company, interact with people, maintain some form of social connection that makes his lonely existence a little less lonely. Myrtle is the only ghost whose location is restricted by external authority. After years haunting Olive Hornby, the Ministry of Magic intervened and confined her to the place of her death. This restriction adds another layer of tragedy to her existence. She's not just trapped in death, she's literally trapped in a bathroom. Her ability to travel through plumbing offers some variation, but it's an incredibly limited existence even by ghostly standards. Myrtle expresses her frustration through fits of anger, flooding the bathroom, moaning loudly, and being generally difficult. It's childish behavior, but she died as a child and never had the opportunity to mature. Myrtle's case also raises questions about ghost rights and regulation in the wizarding world. The Ministry of Magic clearly has authority to restrict the movement of ghosts who are causing problems. There's a specific department that deals with this, part of the Department for the Regulation and Control of Magical Creatures. The categorization of ghosts as creatures instead of people is in itself interesting and somewhat problematic. It suggests that, in the official view of the wizarding government, ghosts lost their status as conscious beings with full rights when they chose not to move on after death. Hogwarts ghosts serve as continuing education on this lesson. Each student who passes through Hogwarts learns, consciously or unconsciously, that there are fates worse than death. Living or existing as a shadow of oneself, trapped in regret and fear, without capacity for growth or change or true pleasure, that's worse than accepting natural death. And so we reach the end of this journey through Hogwarts's haunted corridors. The truth about ghosts is much deeper and darker than any film adaptation could capture. They're not just decorative figures floating through corridors. They are living warnings about the price of fear, unresolved regret, and the inability to let go. Helena Ravenclaw eternally carries the weight of having betrayed her mother. The bloody Baron drags chains of guilt for a murder committed in rage. Nearly Headless Nick openly admits his choice was cowardly. Myrtle remains trapped in the mentality of a tormented teenager. Each of them teaches us that life should be lived fully, that mistakes should be faced while there's still time to correct them, and that when our time comes, we should have courage to move on to the next great adventure. If this content made you see Harry Potter in a completely different way, leave that like, share with your Potterhead friends, and of course subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next videos where we continue unraveling the darkest secrets of the wizarding world. Comment down here which ghost impacted you most and why. Until next time, and remember, death should not be feared by those who have lived well.